This is Matthew Cratter from Bitcoin University. Today I want to talk about how I was so wrong about Ethereum and also what comes next. If you haven't watched yesterday's video, some of you might find it funny in which I talk about how Vitalik got his big boy pants. Many of you thought this video was really funny, but others thought that it was just sour grapes. And in a sense, it was. So I want to make it really clear for the record how I got this thing 100% wrong. I said repeatedly in videos over the past few years, and even recently, that a spot ETH ETF would never, ever be approved in the US unless the Ethereum Foundation and other groups involved in the Ethereum ICO formally registered with the SEC. And they never did, but we are still going to get a spot ETH ETF in the US. So I was 100% wrong for the record. Now, how did I get this thing so wrong? I was relying on the SEC to continue to apply the Howey test to Ethereum, and they've been serving Wells notices against various actors in the ecosystem, and this gave me even more confidence that a lawsuit was coming. Under the Howey test, ETH definitely qualifies as an investment contract. I don't think this can be disputed, and thus would need to register with the SEC before it could be offered to the general public in the US. And until it did so, I maintain that you could never issue a spot ETF out of ETH because you'd basically be packaging up an unregistered security and offering it to the general public. And as far as I know, there's never been an ETF whose components were unregistered securities, at least until now. What the SEC did last week was cave into political pressure from the White House and approve an ETH ETF, essentially. This doesn't make me any less wrong, since I should not have estimated how strong the politics could be in an election year. So many of you are asking me, is ETH now considered a commodity? I don't think so. I don't think it can be, because it does still pass the Howey test. And I think any objective observer would still come to this conclusion. So ETH is now in this weird gray zone where it's not a commodity, it's not a registered security, it qualifies as an investment contract, so it's a security. They've never registered with the SEC, so it's an unregistered security, and yet it's still going to get its own spot ETF. Now, some of you have rightly noted a technicality here where what was approved, it was just the 19B4 forms that were approved, not the S1 registration statements. And this is correct. Each of the individual ETF issuers, like BlackRock or Grayscale, for example, will need to file these S1s with the SEC. Then there'll be some back and forth, as there was with the big Bitcoin ETFs, and these will eventually be approved, certainly before November would be my guess. So while these ETH ETFs have not been officially approved, they've certainly been green-lighted, and I think there's very close to 100% chance that these will be trading on US markets in a couple of months from now. I think Predator here sums up my initial reaction to this news. He writes, if the Howey test is truly dead, then let's stop picking winners and losers and just take every asset currently listed on Coinbase, give them all an ETF on the same day. It's the fairest outcome for retail investors. If you want to F over retail investors the hardest, then here's how you do it. Spend the next 20 years slowly approving arbitrarily selected shipcoins one by one, allowing the insiders closest to the ETF process to fleece retail investors on these shipcoins with their privileged access to information. That was my initial reaction as well, but I think Tour has a good take on it here. I imagine Machiavelli would advise US politicians to allow for about 5 altcoins, so 5 coins in addition to Bitcoin, to get their own ETF besides Bitcoin, so as to maximally confuse the market and especially confuse new investors to the space who don't understand the profound differences between Bitcoin and crypto, and also give ample leverage to power brokers, divide and conquer. And I think Tour is on the right path here. If we take a look at the market reaction to the SEC news, obviously ETH pumped a lot against Bitcoin. A security like Solana pumped a little bit, certainly not as much as ETH, but more than other coins. So this may be one of the ones that gets an ETF. But if we look at some of the classic shipcoins, they did not move up against Bitcoin on this news, and I think that's very interesting. So, for example, Cardano is hitting new lows after the news, as is XRP. Well, XRP bounced a little bit, but not significantly, and certainly not as much as Solana or ETH did against Bitcoin. As Checkmate writes in this tweet, max pain for crypto Twitter would be thinking that the new ETFs override the market signal and downtrend in the ETH Bitcoin ratio. Everyone expects the classic capital waterfall from BTC to ETH to long tail Mid-curve buys the middle, but the performance continues to concentrate on left and right tails. I think that makes a lot of sense. Translation would be Bitcoin far right curve will continue to pump. Meme coins, far left curve garbage, will continue to pump, but always different meme coins. So this is essentially impossible to trade and not something that's really worth your time. ETH should continue to pump from ETF inflows and the expectation of inflows, but it's an open question how much ground it can gain against Bitcoin on the chart. And I think Checkmate is saying here that he expects ETH to continue to trend downwards against Bitcoin over the medium term. So it's an open question how much ground ETH can gain against Bitcoin on the chart, but then everything else, everything in the mid curve, as we saw with Cardano, with ADA and XRP, everything in the mid curve will continue to lose value against Bitcoin, as we were seeing here. That makes a lot of sense to me. Would seem a little strange to have hundreds and hundreds of cryptocurrency ETFs. But again, it may just come down to politics, and we will see. It's important to note, though, with the SEC decision, that none of Ethereum's fundamentals have changed. It's still a cryptocurrency with a large pre-mine, a history of repeated hard forks, including one to bail out insiders, the notorious DAO hack. ETH has no credible forward monetary policy, no credible future max supply. And the reason we're talking about this isn't sour grapes. These are very, very important fundamentals when it comes to neutral money. And the fundamentals always exert themselves over the medium to long term. So that's why it's important to remind ourselves of this. ETH has no credible forward monetary policy because they've hard forked and changed their monetary policy so many times. No credible future max supply of coins. Pre-mine beneficiaries control of block production thanks to the switch to proof of stake, has a roadmap, it has a living founder, etc. So there are all these things that make it less than neutral money. I like Luke's post here. The Ethereum ETF approval doesn't change the fact that they've changed their monetary policy 7 times in 7 years. Ethereum is digital fiat. They're just recreating all the problems of fiat and putting it on the blockchain. And he's got a great chart here that shows the different hard forks. So over the medium to long term, I would expect ETH to continue to lose value against Bitcoin, basically forever, because only BTC has credible forward monetary policy, credible max supply cap, 21 million coins. It has this immaculate conception, no living founder or roadmap or insiders in control. And this is important not just from an SEC Howey test perspective, but it's important from the perspective of true decentralization and true neutrality of the money. You can't have global neutral money when you have a cabal of insiders, as you do with Ethereum, doing most of the block production thanks to proof of stake. Bitcoin obviously has globally distributed proof of work, which is a much better and more secure consensus mechanism, much less resistant to taking over than proof of stake. There remains no second best. There's just Bitcoin. And I thought this tweet from Eric Balkunas was interesting. One of the challenges for ETH ETFs in penetrating the 60-40 boomer world is distilling its purpose value into an easy to understand soundbite a la Bitcoin is digital gold. Does a simple one-liner like that exist for ETH? If so, what is it? And if you scroll down here, you'll see that there really is no simple one-liner. ETH has changed so many times. It's changed its purpose. It's changed its utility many times through its hard forks. It started off as a world computer, and then it was going to be ultrasound money and compete with Bitcoin, which failed because it doesn't have a credible max supply, etc. And so this will hurt the marketing of it. It's less clear, and it will be less clear to institutional investors why they should actually buy an ETH ETF, especially when that ETH ETF is not staking any ETH and participating in the proof of stake process. This is going to be a really weird ETF in that sense. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the subscribe and like buttons. Hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I publish my next video. And let me know your questions and comments in the comment section below. Thanks all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.